Chapter 8. Link reached down and picked up the mask left behind by the fallen warrior. As his fingers brushed against its surface, a strange sensation crawled up his arm, and suddenly, the world around him twisted and pulled him away. When his eyes opened, he was no longer in the temple. Instead, he stood upon a floating purple pillar, suspended in a vast, cloudy void. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, yet far in the distance, a massive figure loomed. It had long, slender limbs, its body adorned with strange markings, and as it shifted, it let out a deep, sorrowful cry. Tattle hovered beside Link, her small wings fluttering nervously. "What is this place?" she murmured. The giant let out another sound, a deep, mournful hum. Though the words were barely decipherable, Tattle strained to make sense of them. "Find them. Call us."
"Who are you?"
"Are you the ones we are supposed to find? Can you help us?" Tattle asked, rattling off an array of questions. The giant's voice rumbled through the emptiness. Then, a soft melody resonated in the air, a tune hummed in its low, sorrowful voice. Without thinking, Link pulled out his ocarina and carefully mimicked the notes, but as soon as he played them, the world around him shattered like glass. In an instant, Link was back inside the temple, the weight of the mask still in his grasp. He could feel the song lingering in his mind, but something was missing. He hadn't learned all of it. Only a few notes remained in his memory of the exchange. Tattle hovered closer, her voice filled with urgency. "What just happened? That thing, who was it?" As Link steadied himself, the weight of the mask still lingering in his hands, he took a cautious step forward. The stone beneath him, worn and cracked from battle, groaned under his weight. Before he could react, the floor suddenly gave way, and he plummeted downward. He landed hard on the ground below, dust and debris swirling around him. A sharp voice called out from the shadows. "Who's there?" Link lifted his head to see a small Deca girl peeking out from around a corner. Her large red eyes were filled with fear as she cautiously stepped into the dim light. Tattle gasped. "Link, that's the Deca princess. You're scaring her. Change into a Deca." Link quickly reached for the mask. As he pressed it to his face, the familiar sensation of the transformation took hold, his body shrinking, his skin hardening into bark. When the magic settled, he looked up to see the princess studying him with a mix of relief and urgency. You're a Deku," she said, her voice softening. She stepped closer, examining him. "I am the princess of the Deku Kingdom. I came here to investigate the poison water, but I was trapped inside the temple. My companion, the monkey, where is he? Did he escape?" Tattle spoke up. "It's bad. Your father has him locked up, and he's blaming the monkey for your disappearance. They're going to punish him." The princess's eyes widened in horror. Then, anger overtook her face.
"What?
"That foolish father of mine.
How could he be so blind?"
The monkey would never betray us." She clenched her small fists, trembling with frustration. "I must return to the palace immediately." She turned to Link, determination burning in her eyes. "Please, take me back at once." The air inside the Deca Palace was tense, the flickering bonfire casting long shadows against the chamber walls. The assembled Deku fell into stunned silence as the princess stepped out from behind Link, her tiny frame radiating fury. The Deku King's eyes widened in shock before he let out a joyous cry. "My daughter, you're safe." His voice cracked with emotion as he rushed toward her. "I was so worried." Before he could finish, the princess leaped at him, knocking him flat on his back. The entire court gasped. "You air-headed, arrogant fool," she shrieked, jumping up and down on his chest with each word. "You stubborn, clueless, thick-headed idiot." The king flailed helplessly, unable to escape his daughter's furious stomps. "Release the monkey. Right now," she demanded, pointing a tiny finger at the guards. The guards scrambled to obey, rushing to the wooden cage and unlocking the monkey's bindings. The moment he was free, the monkey scampered toward the princess. "I'm so sorry," she said, bowing her head. "My father was a fool to blame you." The monkey stretched his arms and smiled. It's okay, princess. I knew you'd come back. I'm just glad everything is right again. The court murmured amongst themselves, processing what had just happened. Meanwhile, the princess turned to Link and bowed deeply. Thank you for saving me and for stopping my father's mistake. Our kingdom is forever in your debt. Link nodded, and with nothing more keeping him there, he turned and left the palace. As he stepped out into the open air, Tattle floated beside him. Well, that's one crisis dealt with, she said, stretching her tiny wings. But then, she turned toward the horizon, and her glow flickered with alarm. Link! The moon! Link followed her gaze. The sky was painted in the warm hues of sunset, and yet there was an eerie presence looming over them. The moon, massive and menacing, was now dangerously low. Time had nearly run out. Tattle darted around him frantically. We wasted so much time. It's already the third day. You need to play the Song of Time again. Hurry. Without hesitation, Link pulled out his ocarina and played the familiar, ancient melody. As the final note echoed through the air, everything around him blurred, and time began to reverse once more. Chapter 9. Leaving the safety of Clock Town behind, Link ventures into the northern stretch of Termina Field. The land here is more rugged, with rocky hills and patches of dead grass giving way to the frigid air of the looming mountains ahead. The ground trembles beneath his boots as he narrowly sidesteps a massive Dodongo, its thick tail slamming into the dirt where he had stood moments before. The creatures roam the field in slow, deliberate strides, but their sheer size makes them dangerous. Link moves swiftly, weaving between them, avoiding their fiery breath as he makes his way toward the towering cliffs in the distance. Before long, the land turns icy, and jagged walls of frost block his path forward. Tattle flutters beside him, her glow casting a faint light against the frozen barrier. Great, now what? We can't just walk through solid ice. Link scans the landscape and spots a massive icicle hanging overhead, glistening under the dim mountain light. Without hesitation, he unslings his newly acquired bow, nocks an arrow, and pulls back the string. With a sharp twang, the arrow soars through the air and strikes the icicle's base. A crack echoes through the mountains as the frozen shard shatters loose, tumbling down and crashing into the ice wall below. The impact splinters the barrier apart, revealing a pathway deeper into the mountains. Tattle hovers ahead, her tiny wings fluttering against the sudden gust of cold air. Nice shot. Now let's get moving before I freeze solid. Link presses onward, stepping into the icy pass. The further he climbs, the heavier the snowfall becomes. The wind howls through the cliffs, biting against his skin and stinging his exposed face. The swirling blizzard thickens around him, obscuring the path in all directions. Footsteps vanish beneath the fresh snow almost as soon as they are made, and the once clear landmarks become nothing but vague shapes swallowed by white. Tattle's voice shouts over the wind, but even she sounds distant. Link, can you even tell where we're going anymore? Tattle buries herself in Link's tunic in a sad attempt to keep them both slightly warmer. The cold gnaws at his limbs, and a creeping sense of disorientation settles in. With the world around him swallowed in endless white, Link trudges forward blindly, deeper into the mountain's grip. The wind howls around him, but as he stumbles between two towering rock formations, the gusts lessen slightly. Here, in the narrow crevice, the snowfall isn't as fierce, allowing him a moment to catch his breath. He glances around, searching for any clue of where to go next. That's when he spots it, a small red spot in the sky, bouncing wildly in the high winds. Squinting against the flurry, he takes a few steps closer, trying to make out the shape beneath it. Through the shifting snow, he can just barely see something dangling below, a figure flailing helplessly as the storm tosses them around. Tattle pokes out from Link's tunic. Is that a person? She shouts over the wind. Link grips his bow, unslinging it from his back as he plants his feet firmly in the snow. He nocks an arrow, steadying his aim despite the biting cold numbing his fingers. His first shot barely misses, the wind knocking the arrow off course. Gritting his teeth, he quickly draws another, adjusts for the wind, and fires again. The arrow strikes true, piercing the red balloon. With a sharp pop, the figure lets out a startled yell as they plummet down, vanishing into a thick snowbank below. Link rushes toward the fallen figure, the snow crunching beneath his boots. Reaching the spot, he crouches down and begins pulling the person free. With a few tugs, he unearths a small, oddly dressed man, wearing tight green clothes that seem far too thin for the brutal cold. The man blinks in surprise at Link before his face breaks into a wide, jolly grin. "Oh, what luck! You have saved me, kind forest fairy." He brushes snow from his pointed hat and straightens his red backpack, seemingly unfazed by the near-death experience. Yes, yes. Tingle was simply enjoying a grand adventure when, oh, the winds. So cruel. But fate has brought you to me. Tal, still tucked away inside Link's tunic, peeks out cautiously. The moment the little man's eyes land on her, they widen in excitement. "A fairy! A real fairy!" he exclaims, clasping his hands together in delight. Oh, how marvelous! Tingle's father always told him fairies were not real, but Tingle knew. Oh, lucky day. Tatl recoils slightly. But the man, Tingle, seems completely unbothered by the storm raging around them, his grin unwavering as he continues to marvel at their presence. Tingle dusts off his sleeves and stretches his arms dramatically. Now then, you must be wondering what Tingle was doing up in the sky. He puffs out his chest with pride. Tingle is a cartographer, a master of maps. The winds may toss me around, but knowledge is my true guide. Tatl hovers slightly closer, intrigued despite herself. Wait, did you say cartographer? Yes, yes. Tingle has traveled far and wide, documenting the land. He gestures broadly, nearly slipping on the ice before catching himself. But something is very strange here. The last time I was in these mountains, it was spring. Flowers blooming, Gorons sunbathing on warm rocks. Ah, what a sight. He frowns, rubbing his chin. This blizzard is not natural. Not natural indeed. Something is terribly wrong. Tatl nods. We figured as much. But if you have a map of the area, that would really help us out. Tingle's face lights up. A fairy with a good head on her shoulders. Yes, yes, Tingle does have a map. He swings his bag around and rummages through it, muttering to himself. Where did I? Ah, here it is. With a flourish, he produces a piece of parchment and unrolls it, revealing a hand-drawn map of the region. Link takes the map, his fingers brushing against the coarse paper. The winding paths, frozen lakes, and mountain peaks are carefully illustrated, though the edges are marked with doodles of stars and tiny fairies. Tingle points at the most important locations. Now, let Tingle explain. Here, this is the Goron village. Ah, such hardy folk, always rolling around. And up here, this is Snowhead. Tingle could never get too close, but Tingle saw it. Tingle saw the Goron guardian protecting the temple. But be warned. The snow may have changed the paths, so Tingle's map may not be entirely accurate anymore. But it is still the best map you'll find. He gives a dramatic bow. Tatl flits over Link's shoulder, scanning the map. Well, it's better than nothing. Tingle claps his hands together. And with that, Tingle must bid you farewell. Thank you, kind forest fairy, for saving me from my unfortunate aerial predicament. He throws his arms wide, standing on his tiptoes as he proclaims, Kulu Limpa. These are magic words Tingle invented himself. He chuckles to himself before suddenly turning serious. He leans in slightly, looking Link straight in the eye. Don't steal them. Link tilts his head slightly, unsure how to even respond, but Tingle simply nods sagely, as if some great understanding has passed between them. Then, with one last jolly wave, Tingle waddles off into the snow, leaving Link with the map in hand. Link pressed forward, trudging through knee-deep snow as the wind howled around him. He kept the map gripped tightly in one hand, his other raised to shield his face from the icy gusts. Despite the blizzard, the landmarks on the parchment still lined up well enough with what little he could see through the whiteout. Tattle hovered close to his shoulder, her glow barely visible in the swirling frost. This cold is awful. How do people even live up here? She shivered, her wings flickering. Ugh, we need to find shelter before we freeze solid. According to Tingle's map, the Goron village wasn't far now. The thick snowfall made it hard to tell exactly where the path ended and where the cliffs began, but after some careful navigating, the blurred outline of a structure came into view. He quickened his pace. As he neared, the shape resolved into two squat buildings of stone and wood, their roofs heavily laden with snow. Link scanned the area for a door, stepping carefully through the snowdrifts. Then, thud. He walked straight into something solid, something warm. The snowbank before him suddenly unfurled. With a great whoosh, a massive figure rose from the ground, shaking off a layer of snow like a dog shaking off water. Two large round eyes blinked down at Link, and a deep, rumbling voice boomed through the storm. Whoa-ho. Didn't see you there, little guy. Link took a step back, craning his neck to look up at the massive Goron, his thick arms crossed over his chest. His rocky skin was dusted with frost, but he didn't seem to mind the cold, at least not as much. The Goron chuckled. What are you doing out in a blizzard like this? You'll freeze solid. He clapped a huge hand on Link's shoulder, nearly knocking him over. Come on, let's get you inside where it's warm. With that, the Goron stepped up to one of the buildings and, with a practiced motion, curled into a ball and slammed into the ground. The impact sent a tremor through the snow, and with a deep clunk, the stone door to the building shot open. The Goron grinned and gestured inside. Hurry up before the snow piles up again. Link wasted no time stepping through the doorway, grateful for the promise of warmth as the storm raged on outside. Chapter 10. The interior of the Goron dwelling was vast and open, its walls carved from solid rock, with high ceilings that echoed with the constant crackling of torches and the low murmur of troubled voices. Though the fires provided some warmth, the frigid air still clung stubbornly to the space, a clear sign that the blizzard outside was unrelenting. Link stepped closer to one of the larger bonfires, stretching his fingers toward the flickering flames, allowing the heat to seep through his chilled skin. Only then did he truly register the wailing. A piercing, high-pitched sob echoed throughout the chamber, so loud and persistent that it made Link wince. As he turned, he saw that nearly every Goron in the room had their hands pressed against their ears, some groaning in discomfort, others simply staring at the ground in defeat. Link approached one of the Gorons, who turned to him in surprise, lowering his hands for just a moment. His expression quickly shifted from curiosity to exasperation as the crying persisted. I wasn't expecting a visitor in times like these, the Goron said, shaking his head. But if you've come for shelter, you're welcome to stay. Not that you'll find much peace here. Tattle fluttered close to Link's ear, her tiny wings buzzing over the wailing. What's with all the noise? She asked, already irritated. The Goron let out a long sigh. That's the chief's son. He's been crying like this ever since his father left for Snowhead. He went to stop the blizzard, but he hasn't returned. First Darmani, and now. His voice trailed off, then he gestured toward the small figure near the back of the hall, a young Goron boy curled up, his tiny fists rubbing at his tear-streaked eyes as he sobbed uncontrollably. He will not calm down. We've tried everything, but nothing works. He just keeps calling for him. Link turned toward the child, watching as his tiny shoulders trembled with every breath. The Goron then noticed the ocarina fastened to Link's belt. You wouldn't happen to know any lullabies, would you? Only the chief and Darmani know the lullaby that puts her to sleep. But the Goron's words trailed off once more. Link hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward, pressing his hands over his own ears as the wailing intensified the closer he got. The sound made his head pound, but he pulled out his ocarina and carefully brought it to his lips. He played a soft, gentle tune, letting the notes linger in the air, but as soon as the melody ended, the child only sniffled, blinking at him through watery eyes before bursting into even louder sobs. That didn't work, Tattle groaned. Between hiccuping cries, the little Goron whimpered, I want Daddy. Then the child continued his banshee-like wail. Link lowered his ocarina, realizing that no song that he knew would soothe him, not until he heard the one he truly needed. As the Goron child's cries echoed through the chamber, Link's eyes were drawn to something, a faint shimmer in the air, just above him. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the firelight reflecting off the ice creeping along the walls, but as he focused, he could make out the hazy outline of a figure. It floated just above the child, watching him with a sorrowful stillness. Link stiffened. The figure shifted, as if sensing his gaze, then turned toward him. An unseen force gripped Link's chest, not with fear, but with an undeniable sense of urgency. The figure drifted away, weightless and silent, gliding toward the entrance of the Goron dwelling. Tattle, noticing Link's sudden stillness, hovered beside him. "Hey, what's wrong?"
What are you looking at?
She followed his gaze but saw nothing. Without a word, Link started forward. Tattle blinked in confusion as he walked past her, his eyes fixed on something she couldn't see. The figure reached the heavy stone door leading outside, and passed through it as if it weren't there. Link didn't hesitate. He pushed forward despite Tattle's protests. "Wait, where are you going?" she called, flitting around him in alarm. A nearby Goron, noticing Link's movement toward the exit, frowned. "You're not thinking of going outside, are you?" The Goron stepped forward. "It's dangerous at night, especially in this storm. You'll freeze to death before you get anywhere." But Link was already reaching for the door, the weight of unseen eyes urging him forward. He braced himself against the freezing air as he stepped outside. The blizzard had only grown fiercer, the howling winds cutting through him like knives. Snow lashed at his face, and the world around him became a swirling white abyss. But ahead, barely visible, was the floating figure, a faint, glowing outline that flickered in and out of sight. Tattle zipped beside him, shaking with frustration. "Are you seriously just ignoring me? You can't even see where you're going. What if you get lost out here?" Link kept his eyes locked on the spectral figure, trudging forward despite the wind trying to push him back. The figure drifted ahead, leading him through the relentless storm. Link's boots crunched over the deep snow, his breath coming in harsh gasps as the cold bit into him. The blizzard blurred everything else. There were no landmarks, no signs of direction, just the endless expanse of white. But then, through the haze, he saw it. A cave, barely visible beneath a ridge of ice-covered rock. The figure passed through the entrance, vanishing inside. Link staggered forward, stepping into the cave's shelter. The howling wind faded behind him as he entered, and his eyes immediately fell upon something in the center of the cavern. A massive stone slab stood before him, its surface carved with markings.
"Agrave marquer."
A low, resonant voice echoed through the cave. "So, you can see me, then?" Link spun around. Hovering in the dim light of the cave was a spectral figure, a Goron, large and powerful even in death. But his translucent form flickered like dying embers, and across his broad chest was a terrible wound, an open gash that seemed to glow with sorrow rather than pain. His eyes, though strong, were heavy with grief. The spirit gazed at Link in silence for a long moment before speaking again. "It takes a brave warrior, one who has seen death with his own eyes, to witness a spirit such as I. You are the first." His voice, though deep, was laced with sorrow. Tattle, unusually quiet, hovered close to Link, her tiny glow subdued by the weight of the moment, realizing now that he had been what they were following. The Goron ghost lowered his head slightly, his expression full of regret. "I was once a great warrior of the Gorons, their protector, their hero." His voice wavered with bitterness. "I was Darmani, the sworn brother of my people. It was my duty to guide them, to shield them from harm, to be their strength when they had none left." His fists clenched as his form flickered. "But I failed them." Link stood still, listening as Darmani continued, his voice thick with grief. "I marched towards Snowhead, determined to stop this blizzard that chokes our land. I thought I could do what no other could. I believed my strength would be enough." His heavy brow furrowed, and his spectral fists trembled at his sides. But the winds, they were stronger. The ice beneath my feet was treacherous. I lost my footing and fell into the abyss. The cave seemed colder as his words lingered in the air. Darmani's voice became softer, the weight of his failure pressing upon him. I left them, all of them. My brethren, my people, my sworn duty. I can still hear the cries of our elder's child, but I cannot reach him. I cannot comfort him. No matter how hard I try, he cannot see me. He will never hear my voice. I cannot do even such a small thing. His massive form seemed to shrink, his spirit dimming with sorrow. I have failed them. I was their hero, and now I am nothing. The air in the cave felt heavy with his despair, his words carrying the pain of a warrior who had given his all, only to fall short. Link felt the weight of Darmani's sorrow settle deep within him. The warrior's grief was palpable, his pain filling the cave like an unseen force. But then, a thought surfaced in Link's mind, words spoken by the masked salesman, mysterious yet filled with purpose. A melody that takes pain and sorrow and seals it away. Link reached for his ocarina. The moment his fingers touched the smooth instrument, the cave seemed to hold its breath. He lifted it to his lips and began to play. A soft, haunting melody drifted through the cold air. The notes echoed through the cavern, intertwining with the flickering light of the torches. Each note carried warmth, weaving through the stillness, wrapping around the sorrow lingering in the ghost's form. Darmani gasped. His flickering spirit shuddered, as if something deep within him had stirred. Tears welled in his spectral eyes. Visions filled his mind. His Goron brothers gathered around him, their faces full of admiration and gratitude. He could see them clapping his back, cheering his name, their voices ringing with pride. You did well, brother. You have made us proud. You will always be our hero. Tears streamed down Darmani's face, but they were no longer of sorrow. He wiped his eyes with the back of his massive hand, his burden lifting as the melody swelled around him. His spirit, once weighed down by regret, now felt light, free. He had done well by his brethren. They had respected him and loved him. They would not want him to feel such pain and sorrow for not doing enough with his life.
He knew that now.
He had lived his life well. He turned to Link, his proud warrior's stance restored, and gave one final nod of thanks. A smile crossed his face, one of peace, of fulfillment. He looked at Link, the boy who had given him peace. The child. Darmani closed his eyes and hummed a low, soothing tune. It was deep and steady, like the rumbling of the earth itself, a melody that carried warmth even in the bitterest cold. This is the Goron lullaby, the song my father sang to me when I was just a child. It will bring him comfort. The notes hung in the air, and Link quickly raised his ocarina, mimicking the tune. As he played, the melody settled into his memory, a song of warmth passed down through generations. Then, in a brilliant burst of light, his form faded, dissolving into the air like a wisp of warm breath in the cold. All that remained was a mask, resting gently on the cave floor. Link stepped forward and picked it up. The mask was shaped like the face of a Goron, its features strong, resolute, just like the warrior who had worn them in life. Link turned the mask over in his hands, its carved stone features strong and resolute. He hesitated for a moment, then pressed it to his face. The transformation was instant and overwhelming. The mask clamped onto his skin, and a searing pain shot through his body, just as it had when he first wore the Deca mask. His vision blurred, his limbs stretched and grew, and a deep, rumbling power coursed through him. When the pain subsided, Link looked down at himself. His arms were thick and powerful, his body covered in tough Goron skin. His fingers flexed instinctively, feeling an incredible strength within them. He took a breath, and the cold air stung far less than before. Tattle, who had watched in stunned silence, finally broke it. Whoa, you actually became him. She circled around Link, taking in his new form. That mask didn't just give you his face, it gave you his strength. I can tell. Link clenched his fists, feeling the warmth of Darmani's spirit flowing through him, as if the great warrior himself was lending him his power. Without another word, Link stepped outside. The frigid night wind howled around him, but it barely fazed his new form. With renewed purpose, he set off toward the Goron village. As he entered the Goron dwelling, the Gorons immediately took notice. Murmurs spread through the gathered crowd. Then, one by one, they rushed forward, eyes wide with awe. "Darmani?" One of them gasped. "He's back," cried another. "The great Darmani has returned to save us." Link could see the hope in their eyes, their belief that their fallen hero had somehow risen from the grave. But there was no time to dwell on it. He had a crying child to calm. He made his way to the Goron elder's child, whose wails still echoed through the chamber. The little Goron sobbed endlessly, his small frame shaking. Link reached for his ocarina, but as he lifted it, something strange happened. The instrument changed in his hands, reshaping itself into a set of sturdy Goron drums. Link blinked in surprise, then set them down before him. Taking a deep breath, he played the Goron lullaby. The deep, rhythmic beats resonated through the air, like the steady pulse of the mountains themselves. The child's cries faltered. His trembling slowed. Then, at last, his eyes drooped, and he drifted into a peaceful sleep. Around him, the other Gorons let out contented sighs. One by one, they too slumped where they stood, lulled by the gentle power of the song. Soon, nearly every Goron was at rest, their worries momentarily forgotten. As the chamber remained in peaceful slumber, Tattle broke the silence with a thoughtful hum. "You know, that strange man said something about a guardian at Snowhead, right? A Goron keeping watch or something." She hovered around Link's shoulder as he stepped toward the exit. "If that's true, then maybe that lullaby will put him to sleep too, just like all these Gorons." Link nodded slightly as he turned to leave. But just as he reached the door, a Goron stepped forward, stopping him. "Wait, Darmani," the Goron called, his voice hushed but urgent. He held out a thick leather bag. I owe you an apology. When you first set out for Snowhead, I didn't have our special crop ready for you. I've regretted it ever since. Please take them now." Link took the bag and felt its weight. He loosened the drawstring slightly, revealing a collection of sturdy, rounded bombs. The Goron lowered his head in shame. "I only wish I could have given them to you sooner. But now you can put them to good use." He straightened up, determination in his voice. "Good luck, Darmani." Link gave a firm nod before stepping out into the morning light. The sun had barely risen over the snowy peaks, casting long shadows across the icy landscape. With his new Goron strength, Link trudged through the thick snow much easier than before, his heavy body unbothered by the harsh winds. The blizzard raged in the distance, but he pressed on, periodically checking his map, hoping to stay on the right path. The further he climbed, the more intense the wind became. The snowfall thickened, whipping around him in chaotic swirls. The howling gusts seemed unnatural, almost alive. Then, as he rounded a final bend, he saw it. Snowhead Temple loomed before him, its towering structure barely visible through the storm. A massive crater stretched out before it, and at the very center sat a colossal Goron. The giant figure sat hunched over, his breath coming in long, foggy exhales. But more than that, his very presence seemed to be fueling the storm. The winds churned violently around him, as if his sheer will alone commanded the blizzard to rage on. Tattle flitted closer to Link, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "There's no way that's normal. That has to be the guardian Tingle was talking about." Link tightened his grip on his drums. If the Goron lullaby worked before, maybe it could work again. Link took a steady breath, steadying his grip on the drums. The storm howled fiercely around him, but he focused only on the melody in his heart. He raised his hands and struck the drums, letting the deep, resonant notes of the Goron lullaby ring out through the blizzard. The sound traveled, cutting through the roaring winds with an almost mystical force. The moment the melody reached the colossal Goron's ears, his movements wavered. His heavy breath slowed, his massive form beginning to sway. Link continued playing, pouring the song's soothing essence into each beat of the drum. The guardian staggered, his great limbs trembling as his eyelids grew heavy. Finally, unable to resist, The giant Goron let out a groggy murmur before curling into a massive ball. With a tremendous thud, he toppled forward, rolling down into the crater below. The snow swallowed him whole, burying him in a thick, frozen blanket. Silence followed. The relentless blizzard came to an abrupt halt. The howling winds faded into a still, eerie calm. And, at last, for the first time since arriving in the mountains, Link could see Snowhead Temple clearly. The towering structure stood before him, carved from ancient stone and ice, its entrance beckoning him forward. The once treacherous path leading to it was now visible, though still lined with patches of slick, deadly ice. Link took a cautious step forward, testing the ground beneath his heavy Goron feet. With careful precision, he climbed the precarious path, using his weight to keep from slipping. Step by step, he ascended, until finally, he reached the grand entrance of the temple. Without hesitation, Link pushed forward and stepped inside. Chapter 11. Link stepped inside Snowhead Temple, the bitter cold creeping in even past his Goron-toughened skin. The massive stone walls were coated in thick layers of ice, and the air itself seemed frozen, making each breath visible as a misty cloud. Icicles dangled dangerously from the ceiling, some as large as tree trunks, while ancient stone pillars, cracked from the cold, struggled to support the temple's immense weight. Snow piled in the corners where the wind had swept it, untouched by time. Link took a cautious step forward, his boots crunching against the frozen ground. As he ventured deeper, the silence was broken by the distant echo of shifting ice and the howling wind that occasionally seeped through unseen cracks in the structure. Before him, massive stone blocks obstructed his path. No ordinary human could move them, but in his Goron form, he felt Darmani's strength coursing through him. He crouched low, planting his hands against the nearest block, and with a mighty push, he sent it sliding across the ice, clearing a path forward. As Link made his way through the temple, creatures lurked in the frozen shadows. A white wolfose leaped from behind a column, snarling as it circled him, its breath steaming in the cold air. Link raised his heavy Goron fists, waiting for the creature to lunge. When it did, he delivered a crushing blow, sending it skidding across the ice before it vanished in a puff of white mist. Further in, a group of freezards blocked his path, their icy breath threatening to freeze him solid. With a roar, Link slammed his fists into the ground, sending out a shockwave that shattered the frozen monsters into shards of ice. Tektites skittered across the slick floor, their red bodies stark against the pale surroundings, but Link swung at them with ease, sending them tumbling away. Then, he entered a vast chamber. The moment he stepped inside, the sound of beating wings filled the air. Dozens of ice keys hung from the ceiling, their glowing blue eyes locking onto him as they shrieked and took flight. Link instinctively raised his fists, but his massive hands couldn't grip a bow, and he knew that striking down these foes required precision. Thinking quickly, he tore off the Goron mask, shrinking back to his normal form. Without missing a beat, he pulled out his bow, knocking an arrow just as the first keys dove toward him. He loosed the shot, striking the creature midair, and it dropped lifelessly to the ground. More keys swooped down, their frozen wings sending icy gusts through the room. Link rolled to the side, avoiding their attacks as he fired off more arrows, striking them one by one. When the last keys fell, Link let out a breath, his shoulders relaxing. He had survived, but he knew this was only the beginning. Snowhead Temple held more dangers ahead, and he needed to press on. Link pressed forward through the frozen temple, his heavy Goron footsteps echoing off the ice-covered walls. He used his strength to push massive stone blocks, carving a path through the treacherous halls. The frigid air stung his face as he smashed through frozen obstacles, his fists shattering chunks of ice that had encased doorways and pathways alike. With each room he conquered, the temple revealed more of its secrets, but the cold only seemed to deepen. Then, he reached a massive boulder blocking his path. Unlike the ice and snow he had crushed before, this obstacle would not budge, no matter how hard he pushed. Link furrowed his brow and reached into his bag, his fingers brushing against the smooth metal surface of a bomb. He pulled one out and placed it carefully at the base of the boulder before stepping back. A moment later, the explosion roared through the chamber, sending shards of rock flying in all directions. As the dust settled, a doorway stood where the boulder had been. Link stepped through cautiously, but the moment he entered, the door slammed shut behind him with a heavy thud. The temperature in the room seemed to drop even further, and an eerie silence filled the space. A dim blue light flickered across the icy floor, and suddenly, from the ground itself, a figure began to emerge. Its body shimmered like a mirage, forming into the shape of a robed figure wielding a tall, gnarled staff. Two glowing eyes peered out from beneath its hood as it fully materialized. Link tensed as Tattle darted beside him, her tiny wings fluttering rapidly. "That's a wizrobe," she exclaimed. "These guys are bad news. They'll teleport all over the place and blast you with magic. Stay on your toes." Before Link could respond, the wizrobe let out a strange, rhythmic chant, stamping its feet against the icy floor. Then, it raised its staff high above its head, the tip glowing with a brilliant light. In an instant, the wizrobe vanished, reappearing across the room in a blur of motion. Link barely had time to react before a beam of light shot from the staff, searing the air as it streaked toward him. He rolled to the side, narrowly dodging the blast as it struck the ground where he had stood, leaving behind a scorched mark on the ice. Link growled in frustration. He tried to match the wizrobe's speed in his Goron form, but his heavy frame made him too slow to keep up. Realizing he had no choice, he tore off the Goron mask once again. Now lighter on his feet, he reached for his sword and shield just as the wizrobe warped to another spot. The creature repeated its attack, warping unpredictably around the room before pausing just long enough to unleash another blast of magic. Link stayed on the move, weaving between the attacks, looking for an opening. Then, just as the wizrobe reappeared for another strike, Link jumped forward. His sword gleamed in the dim light as he swung, the blade cutting through the air with precision. He struck true, landing a blow against the wizrobe's robe-like body. The creature let out an unnatural wail, its form flickering wildly like a candle in the wind before vanishing again. Link stood ready, his breath visible in the freezing air. The wizrobe's form flickered wildly, its eerie glow pulsing erratically. Having been struck by Link's sword, the creature seemed to realize it could no longer afford to get too close. It warped around the room at an even greater speed, its movements now erratic and unpredictable, making it difficult for Link to anticipate where it would appear next. Link gritted his teeth. The wizrobe was staying just out of his reach, firing beams of magic whenever it rematerialized. He had to change his approach. Quickly, he slung his bow off his back and pulled an arrow from his quiver, knocking it in place. The wizrobe warped again, this time to a far corner of the room. Link narrowed his eyes, tracking the creature's movement as best he could. The moment it stopped to raise its staff, he loosed the arrow. The projectile sailed through the air, piercing through the swirling mist of the wizrobe's form. The creature let out a shrill, unnatural wail, its body contorting in pain as black smoke leaked from the wound. It attempted to warp away again, but Link was already preparing another shot. The wizrobe barely had time to fully materialize before Link fired his second arrow. This time, the shot struck its chest dead-on. With one final agonized shriek, the wizrobe erupted into black mist, the remnants of its form dissolving into the icy air. Link lowered his bow, exhaling slowly as he scanned the room. The oppressive chill that had settled over the chamber seemed to lift slightly, and Tattle fluttered beside him, her tiny wings glowing in the dim light. "Not bad," she said, sounding impressed despite herself. "You handled that pretty well." As if rewarding his victory, a low rumbling echoed through the chamber. The door that had sealed shut upon his entrance groaned open once more, along with another door on the far side of the room. Link didn't waste any time. He stepped through the newly opened passageway, finding himself in a smaller chamber with an ornate chest resting atop a raised platform. Curious, he approached and lifted the heavy lid. Inside, nestled atop deep blue velvet lining, was a quiver of arrows unlike any he had seen in a long time. The shafts shimmered faintly, and as Link picked one up, he could feel a warmth radiating from it. The arrow's tip glowed softly, as if imbued with magic. "Fire arrows?" Tatl said, watching as Link examined them. "That'll make things easier around here. Ice doesn't really stand a chance against something like that." Link nodded, remembering the last time he had used these powerful arrows. He had seen their strength before, how they could melt even the thickest ice in an instant. They would be invaluable in this frozen wasteland. Sliding the quiver onto his belt, he tightened his grip on his bow and turned back toward the temple halls, ready to put his new weapon to use. Link moved swiftly through the temple corridors, the weight of his new quiver firm against his back. He retraced his steps, returning to a path he had passed earlier, one that had been blocked by a thick wall of ice. As he approached, a chilling wind swept through the hall, carrying with it the harsh crackling of shifting ice. Several freezards loomed ahead, their jagged forms pulsating with an unnatural frost. Their breath hissed as they spewed freezing gusts, trying to encase Link in ice. He didn't hesitate. He drew an arrow from his new quiver, the tip already glowing with an intense heat. He knocked it into his bow, aimed at the nearest freezard, and released. The fiery projectile struck the creature, and in an instant, it erupted into steam, its icy form melting away in mere seconds. Link wasted no time. He fired again, then again, until the last freezard was nothing more than a puddle on the frozen stone. With the enemies dispatched, Link turned his attention to the wall of ice before him. It stood tall and imposing, but with a single shot from his fire arrows, the entire structure groaned and began to melt, water cascading down in streams as a new passageway revealed itself. Tatl hovered beside him, her wings flickering in the dim torchlight. "Those arrows certainly make things easier," she muttered. Link stepped forward, cautiously entering the newly opened passage. The air grew heavier, thick with an eerie stillness. The tunnel widened, and soon, he found himself in a vast cavern, its walls lined with jagged ice. But it wasn't the size of the cave that caught his attention. It was the massive figure entombed in the ice at its center. A mechanical beast, unlike anything Link had ever seen, loomed before him. Its body was covered in thick metal plating, resembling the form of a great horned beast. Its face was concealed beneath a massive, ornate mask, its details weathered by time. Along the creature's side, faded yet unmistakable, were the Hylian letters spelling out a single name.
Goat.
Tatl fluttered up, inspecting the frozen monstrosity. "That mask on its face, that has to be what we need. It has similar markings to the mask we found in the last temple," she said, her voice cautious. "So, I guess it's time to put those fire arrows to good use." Link nodded, already drawing his bow. He steadied his aim and fired a blazing arrow straight at the ice surrounding the creature. The effect was immediate. Cracks spread like lightning across the frozen shell, steam hissing from the widening fractures. With a loud crack, the ice shattered, sending shards flying in every direction. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, with a deep, guttural roar, Goat came to life. Steam burst from its joints as its massive legs lurched forward. Its body shook violently, gears grinding against metal as it stumbled out of the broken ice. Then, with terrifying speed, it bolted forward, charging wildly around the cavern. The ground trembled beneath Link's feet as the mechanical beast crashed into the icy walls, sending chunks of debris tumbling down. It didn't stop. It kept running, moving in an endless circuit around the cavern, like a wild animal let loose from its cage. Tatl zipped back toward Link, her voice urgent. "That thing is still alive." Link tightened his grip on his bow and braced himself as Goat thundered past, its glowing eyes locked in a frenzied glare. The battle had begun. Link fired arrow after arrow at the advancing beast, but each shot merely glanced off its hardened metal body, doing little more than enraging the creature. Goat let out a piercing mechanical roar before rearing back and kicking up a storm of debris, hurling massive chunks of ice and stone toward him. "Link, use your Goron form." Punch that debris away before it crushes you, Tattles shouted. Link ducked as a jagged slab of rock whizzed past his head, then quickly reached into his bag and grabbed the Goron mask. With a swift motion, he pressed it to his face. The moment it latched on, searing pain shot through his body as the familiar transformation overtook him. His frame expanded, and the heavy weight of his Goron body planted him firmly against the icy floor. With his newfound strength, Link clenched his massive fists and swung at the debris tumbling toward him, shattering ice and stone with powerful blows. Yet Goat didn't relent. The monster's relentless rampage sent even more chunks crashing down from the cavern ceiling. Rocks and ice rained from above, forcing Link to react. Instinct took over. Before he even realized what he was doing, he tucked his limbs in and curled into a ball. A spark ignited within him. The moment his body curled, an energy surged through his limbs, an understanding beyond thought. He wasn't just rolling, he was accelerating. Faster and faster, his weight carried him effortlessly across the cavern floor, picking up incredible momentum with every rotation. Ice cracked beneath him, his spiked shell tearing into the ground as he built speed. The chaotic blizzard inside the cavern blurred around him, the world narrowing to a tunnel of motion. The wind howled in his ears, but he barely noticed. His senses were razor-sharp. He could feel the air currents shifting as he twisted and arced his movement, bouncing off the cavern walls in controlled bursts. Every shift of his body dictated his direction, and without hesitation, he aimed himself at Goat. With an earth-shattering impact, he slammed into the mechanical beast's side. The force of the collision sent Goat stumbling, its giant legs skidding across the ice as sparks erupted from its metallic joints. Tattle's voice cut through the ringing in Link's ears. "Link, hurry. Get to the mask before it gets back up." Wasting no time, Link uncurled, landing solidly on his feet as the energy from his roll dissipated. He sprinted toward the fallen beast, its massive form still twitching erratically. With both hands, he grabbed the ornate mask affixed to Goat's face and pulled with every ounce of strength his Goron form allowed. The mask resisted at first, but with one final tug, it tore free with a metallic screech and clattered to the frozen ground. Goat's body convulsed violently. Without its mask, the once relentless creature spasmed in erratic, mindless jerks before its energy sputtered out. With one final shudder, the beast collapsed in a heap of lifeless metal, steam hissing from its broken frame. Chapter 12. Link found himself standing once again on the lone purple pillar, surrounded by an endless void of swirling fog. The air was thick with silence, yet he could feel the weight of something immense watching over him. He turned his gaze forward, and there, barely visible through the dense haze, loomed a colossal figure. It was only a silhouette, massive, featureless, yet undeniably alive. Its presence was both overwhelming and familiar. A deep, reverberating voice drifted through the mist, distant yet pressing into Link's mind with an undeniable urgency. "Help them. Call us. Find them." The words echoed in his ears, carrying an unfathomable sorrow, as though spoken by something ancient and weary. Tattle fluttered beside him, her tiny wings barely stirring the heavy air. I think they're trying to tell us something," she whispered, her usual sharpness dulled by awe. "Tail told us to find you, but who are you? How can you help?" The figure remained motionless, a guardian beyond comprehension, but its presence was filled with meaning. Without thinking, Link reached for his ocarina. As soon as his fingers brushed against it, a melody stirred in the air, soft, fragmented, like a memory just out of reach. The giant was teaching him something. Link raised the ocarina to his lips and hesitantly played along, the notes feeling both foreign and familiar. Each sound carried weight, as if unlocking something long forgotten. The moment he felt the song beginning to take shape, everything vanished. A rush of wind, a flicker of movement, and suddenly, he was back in Snowhead Temple, the cold stone beneath his feet grounding him in reality. Tattle zipped in frantic circles. "I wish we could get some real answers," she demanded, her voice regaining some of its usual sharpness. That place, that thing, what does it mean? With no answers to be found, Link tucked away the mask of the fallen beast and made his way outside. As they neared the exit of the ancient temple, a sudden shift in the air caught their attention. They stepped outside, and the world had changed. The sky above Snowhead, once a swirling blizzard of gray and white, was now clear and endless, a brilliant blue stretching far beyond the mountain peaks. The treacherous winds had ceased, and the air, while still cold, no longer carried its punishing bite. The heavy snowdrifts began to melt, revealing rocky cliffs and patches of green beneath the ice, as if the mountain itself was breathing again. For the first time since arriving in this frozen land, the world was at peace. As Link made his way down from Snowhead, the once treacherous paths were now slushy and slick from the melting snow. The howling winds had faded to a gentle mountain breeze, carrying the sound of distant waterfalls thawing from their icy prison. As he rounded a bend in the path, something caught his eye, a hunched figure encased in ice, buried beneath what had once been a towering snowdrift. The shifting landscape had revealed him, frozen mid-stride as if he had collapsed while pushing forward. His ancient face was contorted in pain, his arms stretched out as if reaching for something he could never grasp. Tatl hovered closer, gasping. That's him. That has to be the Goron elder. He must have been caught in the storm before he could make it back. She hesitated. You should probably do something. Link nodded, stepping forward. The elder's frostbitten body was locked within thick, translucent ice, his faded robe stiff as stone. Link pulled the Goron mask from his belt, pressing it to his face, transforming into the familiar bulk of his Goron form. He clenched his massive fists and struck the ice with a powerful punch. A sharp crack rang out as fractures spiderwebbed across the surface. Another blow shattered it entirely, sending shards skidding across the thawing ground. The elder stumbled forward, gasping as his body was released from its frozen prison. He hunched over, shivering violently, his breath shallow and ragged. His old eyes, clouded with age, looked up at Link. A flicker of disbelief passed over his face. Darmani? His voice was weak, hoarse from the cold. His trembling hands reached out, brushing against Link's stony Goron skin, as if confirming he was real. Tatl hovered beside him, uncertain. Maybe now's not the time to explain. The elder was too weak to stand on his own, so Link carefully lifted him onto his broad back and began the trek back to the village. The journey was slow, but the elder's shivering gradually subsided as the warmth of the Goron's body enveloped him. As they neared the village, the distant sound of wailing grew louder. The Goron child was still crying, though now his sobs were softer, weaker from exhaustion. When the other Gorons saw them approaching, the village erupted in cheers. They rushed forward, their voices rising in celebration. He's saved the elder. Darmani's a true hero. I knew he'd come back for us. The moment the elder was set down, the Goron child ran forward, throwing himself into his father's arms with a choked sob. The elder held him close, his eyes brimming with emotion as he murmured soothing words. Around them, the Gorons gathered, clapping Link on the back, their voices filled with gratitude. Our hero has returned. Darmani saved us all. Tatl fluttered close to Link's ear, whispering, You sure you're okay with this? Them thinking you're him? Link watched as the Gorons embraced their elder, relief washing over the village like the warmth of the sun. It didn't matter. They were safe.
And that was enough.
As Link and Tatl descended the mountain, the air grew warmer, the bite of winter replaced by the crisp coolness of evening. The sky burned in hues of deep orange and violet, casting long shadows over Termina's landscape. But even as the world seemed at peace, their eyes were drawn to the looming figure in the sky. The moon, impossibly large and impossibly close, hovered just above Clock Town. Its jagged grin and hollow eyes bore down on the world below, a silent reminder of time slipping away. Tatl let out a sigh. That thing just gets worse every time I look at it. She shook her head and turned to Link. Well, we did what we came here to do. You might as well send us back again. Link hesitated for only a moment before pulling out his ocarina. As his fingers found the familiar notes, a golden light surrounded them, and the world itself seemed to warp and twist. The wind howled in reverse, the sun rolled backward through the sky, and all at once, silence. Clock Town Plaza. The bells of the clock tower rang out the dawn of the first day. Townsfolk bustled about, unaware of what had just transpired. For them, time had never moved forward. For Link, the weight of it all remained. Tattle stretched, shaking off the feeling of time distortion. Ugh, I don't think I'll ever get used to that. She turned to Link. All right, what's next? She trailed off when she finally got a good look at him. His shoulders sagged, his eyes dull with exhaustion. The journey through the mountains had been long, the battles relentless, and though time had reset, his body still carried the fatigue. Hey, are you okay? Tattle asked, though she already knew the answer. She hovered a little closer. You know, I just remembered. There's an inn nearby. Maybe you could, I don't know, actually rest for once? Link blinked slowly, then gave a small nod. All right then, that's settled. Tattle flitted ahead, leading the way. Come on. For once, let's take things a little easy. And with that, the two set off toward the inn, the familiar hum of Clock Town's morning life surrounding them.